Right, guys, did you know that around 85% of you who listen to the show haven't yet hit the subscribe or like button?
It's not on that, is it?
Nah, it's rubbish.
So if you have found any value in watching or listening to the podcast, click like, follow, or subscribe.
It helps us so much.
And the bigger this show gets, the bigger Jackie's head gets.
All right, mate, chill out.
So thanks, guys. Enjoy the episode.
Yes, lads.
Do you know where the afters is?
Maybe we could do one on the podcast.
Maybe at one point we get that big, we'll have it on site. Hairdresser. Well, you should have come in a year. We might be all right. We might have been lucky.
Does anyone do a podcast in a barbershop?
I don't know, but
that's
if you're big time, you will have a fucking on-site hairdresser.
Yeah,
Just like,
yeah,
"Right,
absolutely.
no?
I mean, if not, I could try.
Your haircut's piss.
Yeah, I
piss
know.
as fuck. You do it yourself?
No, council does it.
They tax you.
So you two,
Yeah, we will.
You're both brothers.
No.
He's got a brother.
I've got a
your
brother.
brother was on here.
Yeah. That was my brother. Yeah,
But you're like your besties.
we're getting there now.
Well, we've only actually
spoke. Yeah.
a year and a half.
Oh really?
Yeah. This all well, we can talk about this, but me and
Yeah,
me
I'll
and,
interview you two.
yeah. Should we do that today?
Yeah.
Well, actually, before we get into your interview,
Yeah.
George Fleming, welcome to the Afters.
Boys, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
You're
for
very
coming
welcome.
down,
Well,
mate.
Pleasure.
obviously we know who you are, but for those at home who don't, who the fuck are you?
Who the fuck are you? No. That was my.
Was that your Geordie accent?
It was good. Better than mine.
My name is George fucking Fleming,
Lovely.
Nice.
and I'm the founder of Save Our Scene,
Wonderful.
which is a little thing I started during lockdown, and it's now my full-time job.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. I love it.
Good. Well, there we go. So look, let's start at the start then, George.
Right. Okay.
Origin story. Like, how did you get into music? Like, do you have a background in music, or like how did this all start for you?
Well, it probably started when I was about 8 years old. Parents signed me up for piano lessons,
Oh wow.
and learned how to play the Titanic and all sorts. And then I was actually really getting into it, and I had a new teacher come in, and she had this awful habit of spitting when talking to me.
Oh, nice.
And after about 5 lessons, I just couldn't cope with being spat on. And I was too nice to say, look, can you should we get a screen up or something?
You could have done with them COVID things.
Yeah, too right.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of the end of my musical career, but always had a big love for music, for dancing, and just being kind of free. And my family's quite musical, but really in terms of electronic music, which is mainly kind of what we do at Save Our Scene. I got no A levels from school, came down to London, got a boring corporate job, and discovered my first rave at probably the age of 20. So I was quite late into discovering this wonderful world, and just fell in love with it, and haven't looked back since, really. But yeah, never really saw a way into the music industry. I always thought that was a bit of a pipe dream, and then it all sort of took a turn during lockdown.
Okay.
So sorry, how old are you now then?
29.
29. So between the first rave at 20 and 2000, so when you were 29, that's 9 years. So were you just out at a punter? Were you in the clubs?
Yeah.
Were you, was that kind of your experience within the music industry? Then?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Just a raver.
Wow, incredible. So we'll get onto that. The Save Our Scene, we'll get straight into it. We had Josh Parkinson on here a few weeks ago.
I saw.
You saw?
I heard.
Oh, you heard, yeah. He spoke very highly of you.
I listened to the whole podcast, and
a good one.
it's really weird hearing other people kind of say nice things about you when you're not there. and Josh Parkinson is a real one, and actually, has been my biggest supporter right from the get-go. I've always known who Josh is, and I always had a bit of a man crush on him. And I remember when I first started, SOS was kind of sliding into his DMs trying to get him to help out, and never got a reply. I was like, this guy Josh is so hard to get hold of. And then and then fast forward about a year, we were in Parliament Square at this We Make Events protest. It was a socially distanced protest, and we were a bit like, we all stood here in silence, socially distanced, and like it just felt like we weren't really going to get our voices heard by doing that. So we sparked up a spliff, sat down, started hashing out some ideas, and then a week later we did our first protest, which was a bike ride through central London from Marble Arch down to Parliament Square. Josh in a rickshaw, which I don't know whether he told you about.
Yeah, I think he did talk about it. Actually.
And it was amazing. Like 300 people turned up, and like we obviously just went rogue and did it, and it was amazing. Kind of Enemy covered it, got interviews on the news and things like that, and that was kind of the first moment it really felt like we were doing something which was kind of being listened to.
Yeah. And how...
So big up Josh.
Yeah, big up Josh. He's a fucking legend.
That story you told about...
I think that was after that, I think.
12-foot lines.
Yeah. It's
Let's not go there.
Anyway, yeah. We've been there.
How did you end up being the one kind of leading this movement, if you want to call it a movement, or this incredible thing you've got going with Save Our Scene? How did you end up being the one... Or how do you feel you ended up being the one kind of leading the way with it?
I was going to make up some crap there. The chosen one. It came down.
You can if you want.
Well, no, it was weird. It was, I was furloughed during lockdown, so I was very lucky in that I was being like paid basically to do nothing. I was at home and we were running this campaign, me and my mate, for the NHS. Social media campaign where we're getting people to do like creative challenges from their home. They would donate £4 to the NHS and then they would nominate 4 other people to do the same. Okay. And that kind of ran for a month, raised some money. It was like suddenly this creative, because at the time I was an estate agent, which I probably shouldn't admit that, and that's what I did for 7 years. Like, I didn't enjoy it really at all. And it was just felt like this moment where I was like, whoa, I'm actually more creative than I thought, and I really want to use this time to actually do something which I want to do. And then the NHS campaign kind of died a death after about a month. And about 3 days of just lying around thinking what can I do? What do I want? And I just couldn't really come to anything. And it really came to me in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning. I bolted up, right? I'll never forget it. Bolted up right in my bed, and I screamed at the top of my voice. This is really cringe. I was like, what do you love? Or like, what do you want? Or something like that. And then I thought about music. I was like, obviously, like, I love music. And then it dawned on me that at the time I'd seen a few articles about how the music industry was being swept under the carpet. And the next morning, woke up, typed in Save Our Scene UK into Instagram. The name was there for taking. And then just started throwing mud at the wall, asking musicians to upload a video to their social media, share the giving link to help musicians, and then they would also nominate 4 others to do the same. And that's how it kind of first got going. Just I typed in Enemy top 100 artists, and it just basically messaged all of those artists saying, would you do this video?
No way.
And then it was just, yeah.
Who was the first one to do it?
You know what? It was a boy called, shout out, Tom Riley, who I think is probably now only about 12 years old.
What?
This 8-year-old kid just did it. And I don't know how he found us or how it even came about, but he was the first one to do it. And
who was he being, like really 9? 8 or 9?
I found the video the other day. Yeah, he was about 9 years old. And it was so sweet. He did this like whole thing about how the music industry is in trouble. And you know what? I really feel like I should one day kind of reach out to him and just like check in and see what he's up to, because yeah, he was the first person to do it. But then, the first person who did it, who we reached out to, it was like, her name was random people. Felix Dixon, Ruba Core, these people who, I'd never heard of, but they were amazing people because they did it. And a lot of people left us on red.
That's meant that you sent all these messages out and all of a sudden it just kind of spiraled. Clearly it showed that it was that message had resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah. And then
straight away.
Well, exactly. It did. You had to throw. It was a lot. It was a lot because you start a Instagram called Save Our Scene, and for the first 3 months you've kind of got 100, 200 followers on it, so no one really kind of takes you seriously. But a few people gave us a chance, and then Jess Izzat came along, who is BBC introducing presenter, and she really helped me, along with the likes of Josh. And then that year, those 2 years during COVID, we were doing various things, and then I met Kai. And
Shout out
then
to
it all
Kai.
changed,
Yeah.
really, with that one day.
So how did you meet Kai? Talk about how did that come about?
So, so this was June 2021,
Yeah,
and at that time we'd already done a few of these bike ride protests.
yeah.
And one of them, which we did, we organised with the police, and we kind of knew how to do it. And anyway, I walked into work one day, into my estate agent's job, and the lady on the reception said, "Oh, have you seen that Kai Beefer's doing a protest about music industry?" I'm like, "What?" I thought, I've not heard anything about this. Anyway, I'd never heard of him before, and I found him on Instagram, messaged him, had a call. Half an hour later, he said, "Oh, look, we can't do it because we can't get it cleared with the police, and the artist will only do it if it's been cleared with the police." I was like, "Mate, we can get this cleared by the police. All we need to do is 7 days written notice, risk assessment, and we're away." He was like, "Really?" Yeah, so we then had another call that evening, and he'd obviously organised some amazing artists, and I just dealt with the logistics side of things, along with this guy called Ed Jenkins. And then 6 days later, there's 50,000 of us on Downing Street having a big old rave up.
So that was June, right? June 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that the first real moment where you were like, "Fuck, this is
Yeah.
this is massive"?
And it was a weird time because we did get a bit of backlash for it, and didn't get as much support as I kind of hoped. I mean, we got a huge amount of support, but it was at a time where you could go to Wembley, which was at full capacity. You could go to Wimbledon, both full capacity, but there were still heavy restrictions on these venues, and they kept delaying the reopening of the venues. And we were a bit like, you know what, we're going to just no real, we didn't have enough time to kind of get a proper PR team and to make sure the messaging was all spot on. We just knew we had to do something and send the message that either you open the clubs or we will just continue to do this week in, week out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it did have an impact. And 2 days later, there was a headline, the headline of the Evening Standard, which isn't exactly a huge paper, but said, "Now let's dance. Clubs will reopen on 19th of July." And I felt like we definitely pushed that headline because there wasn't really any news for a while. So I don't know, but it was great. I mean, fucking hell, I've never seen anything like it.
50,000, and you said you didn't get much support, obviously, from the people you wanted support from, but 50,000 people being there.
No, it was just like it's when it's a bit like all these things when a few people say negative things, they're the ones who stick.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mixmag for saying that all of our equipment got confiscated and taken away, which was a complete lie, and like nothing got taken away, no one got in any trouble. And so it was just like things like that, you're meant to be part of the same
scene,
and actually you're just making us not sound great. And
do you know what? It's funny because we've
they took
talked.
it down.
Well, we've talked about this on the podcast as well in terms of like, there's for our message, like it needs to get across because it is affecting people, drugs and alcohol and all this. But there's certain people in the industry, even though it's a part of it, who don't want to touch it because it's not, right for their image. Do you feel that was the same and maybe is still the same now with Save Our Scene? Do you think there's certain media that won't get onto this because of how it might affect their image?
I try not to dawn on it for too long because I think if I did, I would actually get really angry and I'd actually probably stop doing it because I don't know. I feel like we're now living this world where people don't necessarily, even if a cause or a message is very much aligned to who they are, people do think maybe a bit too hard about whether they get behind things or not, maybe for reasons such as cancel culture. It feels like people's voice has been like taken away from them, or they feel like they can't use it. Whereas if you look back to kind of the olden days, like John Lennon, for example, would never be shy to voice something. People used to use opportunities like the Brits to stand up for important things, or Glastonbury. And nowadays, I think people are artists, and I get it. It's not easy. People may have found fame. They want to hold on to that. They want to protect their everything about that, and their management doing. There's lots of gatekeepers, so it is becoming harder. But I do think we are a very influential industry, and when something like our live music sector is experiencing its worst days in terms of venue closures and so many other things, it's like, come on, guys, let's rally for what we all depend on. And let's make sure that future artists, future generations have the same space which we've all been so lucky to have. Because it's our, it's the lifeblood of the world.
Why the fuck did Mixmag put that in like that. You know what? I'm going to comment on that because I had an article that I had written about me already published online, and then 2 weeks later, based on feedback on Twitter, the article got changed in terms of the terminology that was used about how I played. So it was all fucking bells and whistles, and I was feeling it was paint me in the great picture. And then 2 weeks later, based on other people saying stuff on social media, they changed it. The same title, but they changed the way that I'd played. They changed the view on the set. I'm not going to mention names, but that why would they say that your shit got confiscated for no reason? And I'm not just blaming Mixmag. People, the media do it all the time. And they mislead people. It doesn't make any sense.
They've got a real responsibility, and it does get me a bit upset when these big publications aren't really voicing what's going on, the struggles, the amount of spaces which are closing down. Yes, they do the odd post, but it's like they've actually got a chance to really
change it,
have an impact.
Just on that, do you want to give us some figures in terms of like how much it's closing and changing?
So, I mean, I'll start with last year. 2023 was one of the worst years ever for venue closures. We lost 125 live music spaces, which equates to 16% of venues as a whole.
Oh, wow.
In 1 year?
In 1 year.
Fuck.
And I'll just throw a couple more little stats out there. In the last 15 years, we've gone from 3,000 nightclubs down to 860. So you can see that there's this like very steep decline. We've lost 30% of nightclubs in the last 4 years. On average, UK venues made 0.5% profit in 2023. So 7 out of 10 venues are actually operating at loss. Reasons being things such as rent increases. On average, rent went up by 37.5% for venues.
Yeah, I saw that posted. Yeah, 37.5%.
I see one.
Increase.
They're trying to raise the price of one. It was like
Heaven.
Was it like 300? Did I make that up?
The landlords trying to raise the rent of Heaven nightclub by £320,000. And what's so crazy is that. So when you rent a flat of someone, there's a cap on the house. There's if you're going to raise the rent, the tenant has to agree to it, and then they start paying that extra rent once the tenants agree to it. Whereas with venues, because the landlord's been wanting to increase the rent since September, let's say if the judge decides that the rent does get increased, the venue has to pay that increased rent from September. So they've already got, I don't know, half a mil rent, which will be backdated. And that's crazy. And the Archco company who own Heaven, and they also own a lot of other hospitality spaces, they're obviously in trouble. They need to get rid of Heaven. So they're just trying to blow them out the water by increasing the rent so much that they're kind of like, well, what do we do? And there's nothing which we can really do right now because it's gone to our attribution. I can't say that word very well. But basically it's in the hands of a judge, an independent judge who makes the decision. So there's no amount of campaigning or funds which we can raise, which will actually help them. At the moment, we just need other operators who operate under this particular landlord to come forward and say what they're going through. But yeah, that's just one example, and it's a big worry. But in the meantime, while this is all happening, last year was the best year on record for the commercial live music industry. So you're talking kind of arena, stadium level. And one thing which we're really kind of calling for this year is in the Premier League, money kind of filters down from the Premier League down to lower leagues, and we feel like the same thing should exist in the music industry, where
I like that.
It's got to start filtering down. So we're teaming up with Music Venues Trust, and we're launching this pipeline investment fund. We're going to call it Liveline. It's hot off the press, and the idea is we're going to get these.
Nice.
If every ticket at stadium and arena level had a £1 levy on it, so £1 of every ticket goes into a pipeline investment fund, it would raise something like 28 million annually, which would be enough to not only steady the ship but actually prevent it from sinking entirely. And if that was in place, we would not have lost any of those venues last year. So it's really time that the big dogs do a bit of soul searching and recognise if you want to have the next generation of artists selling out stadiums like Wembley, make sure that the space is there for them to do it. And also, it's making sure that communities have access to culture, because a lot, we don't really notice that as much in London, but Halo in Bournemouth, great club, just shut down. Well, I just got told yesterday that it shut down. They've not announced it yet. And Halo is one of the few venues in Bournemouth. So actually, communities are losing access to live music, which is really sad, and it's becoming very inaccessible for a lot of people.
I didn't know that's close. That was actually me and Liam went to watch Jocko there actually when we first moved back from Berlin to England. We were living in Southampton, and he played at Southampton, and he went to play there after. So, do you feel the government stance has changed at all since June 2021? Since you had the protest outside of House of Parliament?
Well, I think if anything, it's got worse, because during that period they reduced VAT down to 5% for the hospitality and cultural sectors, and then they actually nudged it up to 12.5%. So there was actually support for the venues during that time.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's actually worse. A lot of venues say it's actually worse now than it was during the pandemic, because at least then they had support.
Sorry, just to touch on the Heaven example, because that was one.
Yeah.
That was due to the rent being put up by a fucking six figures. What about all the other smaller venues? Yeah,
okay,
other reasons.
So you've got rents going up, operating costs are up 40%. So just the price of everything's
gone up.
So expensive.
Yeah.
Energy contracts went up by 250% on average for venues last year. And there was one case where I think a venue's energy contract got put up by like 800%. It got put up to like 80-90 grand a year or something like mental. And these energy companies obviously just completely killing these venues. They can't keep going.
Insane.
It is mental.
It is actually like when even just think of this at like a household level. Do you know what I mean? Like how much like my electric has gone up over the past 2 years, and then you see the profits after, and you're like, that doesn't fucking add up.
Yeah, I'm telling my lass not to have like more than 2 baths a week.
Yeah,
and you've got these venues with fucking strobe lights and
that's what I mean. So think about
it must be incredible.
I think, and that's a good way to put that into perspective. Like if you think how much your household goods has gone up and electric, think for a fucking a venue that's maybe only running twice a week as well. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. So those are big reasons, and they're not obviously. The other one is cost of living. People don't have the same amount of people don't have the same amount of disposable income
to go out. Yeah,
this is something I wanted to touch on to see if this was a factor. But when we were in the lockdowns and everyone was at home, I don't know about you guys, but I was partying at home, doing Zoom calls and fucking getting wrecked in the gaff. And like people started having house parties. People were having house parties and getting together, and people were doing it obviously when you shouldn't be. But after that, people realised the cost of everything's going up. The cost of drinks is going up. The cost of everything's going up. So a lot of people were staying at home. Have you got that combined with the fact that rents have also gone up? So you've got less people in the venues on top of big venues, I'm not going to mention names again because it's not fair, but huge 15-cap venues, taking all the clientele away and leaving the smaller venues with nothing. The combination of so many different things. It's not just one thing.
Not helping at all.
No.
Yeah.
I think Drum Sheds is...
I didn't even say it.
I think Drum Sheds is a very impressive space.
Yeah, that's pretty much
it's just funny because you've been trying not to say that for about 3 months.
I never said it. George said it.
Yeah. I just love they've obviously they're just rolling with it, and they've I love some of the marketing kind of catchphrases. It's like, size matters. Big is best.
Smooth.
Big is beautiful. It is. And I get it. And we've obviously got to have space for these big, massive artists to come and play big shows. And there are not many kind of large size venues like it. Something had to replace Printworks, but 15,000 people is a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I've been. Have you been?
Yeah. Been a couple of times. It's a bit daunting.
It is.
I think we need the likes. If there is going to be a huge arena like that, fine. But as long as you are doing something which is supporting grassroots venues alongside it, implement a ticket levy. £1 of every ticket goes into grassroots venues, or even the guest list.
Yeah.
I went there, And
Oh, you paid. You paid.
yeah,
as well.
so you pay
concession.
So yeah, you paid a guest list concession. I was like, oh, where's the money going to? And the person behind the screen said, "Save our scene." I was like,
Did he say
sorry,
it to you?
what? Yeah. Like,
No,
I was
they
like, are you joking?
didn't.
I'm like, all right. And then the guy behind me was like, oh, mate, hurry up. I'm like, hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out whether I'll just become a millionaire. So no, obviously.
Did you see that money?
No, I didn't get there. It wasn't going to save our scene.
But that's what
But
they
should
said.
we just
Yeah,
blagging
he
it?
just got it wrong. It was
Oh, right.
he just got it wrong. He just
Okay,
got
but-
muddled up. It was funny because he had no idea that.
Yeah, that you were.
It was just quite funny.
But I think it is so right. It should filter down because you think like people like who are playing like Jamie Jones. He literally started playing little venues like Public Life in fucking Shoreditch. Do you know what I mean? Which obviously isn't there anymore. You know, so
Well, for that level of artist as well, like when you start, you get your first release, and I'm just talking about DJs here. You might be getting booked for 300-400 quid. You're going to be booked for a small venue.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're an artist coming up, you've got to basically have a really big hit to get booked as a warm-up artist on a drum sheds lineup.
Because there's going to be no
Where's
fucking
the, where's
venues
the
left.
progression? There's no gradual progression there as a smaller artist. So that's obviously affecting the artist as well.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Massively.
what they say, one big agent in particular said to me that they're not so worried about grassroots venues because a lot of their artists don't really come up through the grassroots scene anymore. And it's more social media, things like that. And that, you know, I get it, it's kind of true. I mean, people are blowing up on social media, but the vast majority of people who are playing these big shows have started in the grassroots sector, so don't lose sight of that.
Yeah. You got to give that opportunity. Still.
And it's not just about, you know, it's also
not just about the DJs.
It's not just DJs. You
Yeah,
know,
of course.
The lighting dudes and the sound engineers and all the people who end up getting to the top of their career and doing things like drum sheds have started somewhere.
Yeah.
And we've got to be able to make sure that those spaces where people get nurtured and developed into the industry can do that.
Just on that, do you know, in terms of around Europe, like let's say Berlin, for example, you know, that has, you know, similar culture to here in terms of music. Is this sort of thing happening like worldwide or around Europe, or are we just finding this in the UK?
Yeah, I think it is happening around Europe, and that, you know, the cost of everything has gone up so much and people are struggling. However, I think other European countries on average pay half the amount of VAT as our hospitality and cultural sector does. I think on average about 9%, which helps. You know, France has a mandatory ticket levy on the stadium and arena shows of 3%. So whenever a UK band or UK artist goes and plays a big show in France, 3% goes directly to 3% of the ticket sales goes directly to grassroots venues. So these other countries do recognise culture, and we're falling behind. And we've got, you know, London's mayor yesterday doing a tweet saying London is the leading global city for the nighttime economy. And then the Night Tsar said, London is thriving, and anyone saying otherwise is fake news. And I was just like, how dare you? How bloody dare you? I'm joking. But no, seriously, it did piss me off a bit. Because,
You
know, what an insult to the people who are currently struggling to keep their business alive and about to lay off a whole team of people because they just can't afford their energy bill.
Yeah.
Well, how is he getting the stats for that? Where did he get that? Where does he get the grounds to say that? How is he voicing that? So publicly, that's fucking shocking.
It's making it up now. They just make anything up and just say, if you disagree with this, it's fake news, and then you can't say fuck all. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you feel the UK? Bearing in mind, like,
ask Kai this question. I mean, he'll be like, or Josh. They love it. Yeah. But no, I think when I first started speaking to the likes of Kai and Josh, like this kind of stuff, I was like, ooh, a bit conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's true though. Come
on, let's fucking have it. Let's get the conspiracy hats on, tinfoil hat.
No, we'll be blocked.
There is this grip they want to have on all of us, and they want to control us, and it is all about control, really. Yeah. And I suppose, you know, this kind of capitalist world we live in really does favour, you know, the likes of heaven's landlord, and there isn't protection for communities. And it's, I mean, I think, you know, what we really can't lose sight of is that we've got to be we've got to take it on. We've got to show strength and balls and community and togetherness, because that is what they are afraid of.
Yeah.
So I think, it is possible. There needs to be some sort of, big rebellion, something, because I don't know.
Well, it sounds like you're doing that, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are the rebellion in terms of the scene in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether it makes a difference. I think, they are, and I think if I was in their shoes, lots of venues open, people spilling onto the streets at 3:00, a lot of police time and mess and noise. In their minds, they'd probably rather just have a few big arenas where everyone's just streamlined into one place and they're just taken out, put on the train, bam, gone home. The idea of having all these, other grassroots venues kind of popping up and being a nuisance to all the local residents, it's probably, they don't want that. And there'll be a big developer, knocking on the door, ready to...
Yeah. Because it's funny you say that. I remember we used to play in a traffic bar in Shoreditch. Yeah, we used to, when we was at Egg in London.
Yeah.
And it used to be every Wednesday. And some guy moved in. He'd been there for 3 weeks. And he started coming down, every Wednesday complaining about the level of noise. And I was just thinking, who the fuck moves into the middle of Shoreditch, right? And then after 2 weeks starts coming down on like a Wednesday, Thursday complaining about the noise. And, and that's, another part of the problem there is that people are moving into these communities like Shoreditch. Do you know what I mean?
If you're moving into central Shoreditch, you've got to expect.
You've got to expect that, haven't you? But they're not. And then they're complaining
above a club.
Above, yeah. Well, it's like a bar, but still, it's it's working.
You're asking for it though.
It's in Shoreditch. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what it's sort of known for.
It scares me. This fact that we're losing. Have I just knocked your headphones?
No, it's just me making sure, mate. I just get paranoid now.
Every episode.
Everyone's heard you this whole podcast. This is the Jackie and George show.
Just edit it out like I'm saying something really intelligent.
Yeah, we'll have to edit that if you say something intelligent. But like looking back at my career, playing venues like Mint Club in Leeds, the small one, Sankey's, which wasn't exactly small, but it was classed as a
Loop
small venue.
though. Look at where that.
Like all those parties and venues, they're fucking gone, man. They're all gone. And that all started, probably started a bit before COVID for some of them, but a lot of them just, dissolved. And looking back, I remember looking back at my phone, I have all my gigs where I used to put it into my notes. And looking back a couple of weeks ago, and 60% of those places that I played don't exist anymore. And a lot of that, probably half of them, is due to lack of support. And it's scary. It's scary for the smaller artists I see coming up now, because all I see is if you don't have one big fucking track that goes on TikTok and blows up, how are you going to make that transition to the bigger lineups? And I don't know what that the journey as a smaller artist looks so different now.
Yeah, and the cost of going on tour as well is so much. It's definitely a lot cheaper for these venues to be booking DJs who've got their USB stick than it is to be booking a band. Like, I feel really sorry for bands.
Of course.
We
never talk about that.
Not even thought about that.
If you've got £1,000 to spend on a DJ, that's, you probably book quite a decent DJ. And then if you've got £1,000 to spend on a band, obviously, there's a band of 5, right? They've got to have a van to get all their equipment there. So there's actually 6. You've got to include the drivers. Suddenly it's like everyone's earning nothing. So it's how are they expected to tour? And I think a lot of these venues around the country are really struggling because they can't get the talent coming in to sell out their venue because the bands can't afford to do it.
It's mad that because I didn't even fit,
and that's how they make their money. You don't make money making music.
No one does these days. No one's selling records. No one's selling 12-inch. I had this this exercise in my journal, which essentially you write the 12 months that you want to have, and you also then write the 12 months that you will have if you don't do the things you say you're going to do. So basically it's like worst case scenario, like writing in 12 months, if you don't do anything you say you're going to do, what will that look like? Have you thought about that in terms of the smaller venues closure? And if we keep going in this trajectory, what will it look like if we don't get the support, if we don't get the funding? What's it going to look like?
I think you can't stop a party. I think it's just a matter of where it goes. Definitely for the people who are really passionate about, some of us, it's just built into us. We need that sort of space to kind of feel. So I think there will be back to the underground, mate. Here we go. Back to the underground. Yeah, I think there already is a big rise in illegal parties, house parties, people choosing to do that instead of going to these venues which are very controlled and expensive. So yeah, I think there will always be a culture, but I also do think a lot of people who are probably the type of people who go to an event because there's amazing lights or there's a great lineup or something, they will probably actually just, I don't know, be pushed to their bedrooms and spend more and more time on TikTok doing nothing at home. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like human connection is really what's on the line, and that's one thing I feel most passionately about, is making sure that people don't lose the will to go and meet people and talk to people, look at them in the eyes, and because that's where you really kind of build special friendships. And I just hate the idea of it all being online and you only date online. I don't know, I just feel like it's such a huge shift. The human being is really going through this kind of change, and losing these spaces to be able to be free and connect with each other is really, once you lose those, everything kind of comes tumbling down. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We spoke about this ad nauseum, about the reason we started, or the reason I was going out raving, was all to do with community. It was being around a group of people who were there for the same reason, to fucking relax, blow off steam and have fun. And that human connection, you don't get that on TikTok, you don't get it on Facebook, on FaceTime or any of that shit, right? It's being in the same room, shoulder to shoulder, sweating, fucking just like in amongst it, having it off. And that it was so precious to me. Even like now, knowing I'm not really asked about going out that much as I used to be because of the transition that we've obviously been through, but reminiscing about those times were like some of the most special times in my life. Just being in a nightclub, even if all your mates have left you, you're just in a room surrounded by people who are there for the same reason. That's so special. So I don't want to, anything we can do to fucking talk about this, this movement, this Save Our Scene that you've got going on, is we'll do it, absolutely, mate. And it's great to fucking talk about this properly, because I've actually learned so much about this already. I mean, obviously, Sean told me that he spoke to you about coming on. I was super excited. And looking at doing a bit of research on what you've done so far, and obviously speaking to Josh, who's told me a little bit. But let's get onto that. What like we've talked about loads that you've already done and that they've already achieved. What are you doing now? What's next on the agenda for Save Our Scene for you guys?
So when's this coming out?
We can decide.
No, it's fine. It doesn't matter. No, I was going to try and be like really like elusive. No, I mean, we've got, so basically last year we did a lot of pop-up street raves, and that was kind of trying to prove the point that either you look after the venues or you're doing is pushing it underground, like you can't stop us kind of thing. And I think we proved that point. So we did a lot of that, and so this year we really want to make sure whatever we do has a real reason and we're making a positive impact. So doing more licensed events where we're fundraising for Music Venues Trust. So our next one is down in Bristol with Near Archives at this amazing new space, which is big underground car park, 3,000 people, and that's really exciting. We'll be raising, hopefully 15 to 20k for Music Venues Trust, which will go straight into this pipeline investment fund supporting venues. Amazing. And we've got various events and festivals, festival takeovers. We do a lot of festival TV, stuff like that. But one thing we've also realised is that at the moment you've got the Musicians Union, you've got Music Venues Trust, Nighttime Ministry Association, all these bodies who represent different parts of the sector. However, there currently is no voice for the fans. There's no official fans' voice. And when the Premier League went through changes and implemented this structure where money was filtering down into lower leagues, that actually came from this fans union type thing. And so we are working with Music Venues Trust on basically launching ourselves, or launching a not-for-profit side of the business, which would be the fans' voice, and where we'll do kind of surveys, really finding out what people want, what they want to change, what they care about, and then that will give us weight in going to Parliament with lobbying and things like that. So that's something we're working on. And yeah, doing our first little mini festival this year on the little Thames Island.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, wow.
When's that?
June
Nice.
June. Can you not be
16th.
Okay, wicked. You didn't want to say that there, just in case you got it wrong. Wicked.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. We've got good stuff coming. But it's been a bit of a while. I haven't done an event this year yet, and so I'm quite looking forward just to getting back out there.
Yeah, you've done a few bits and bobs. You've done was it Talk TV?
Oh yeah,
Was
Talk
that?
TV.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a weird one. I didn't really know much about Talk TV apart from Piers Morgan had a show on it, and I walked into this building. And you suddenly realise you're in Rupert Murdoch land. You're like, oh God, that's where I am. There's like big pictures of Piers Morgan and Jeremy Kyle and all the other cancelled presenters. And they gave me a good old grilling, and I thought I wore like a blazer, and
Hey, you look smart as a carrot.
I thought
mate.
I would just kind of like reflect the energy I was going to be getting, and they did go into me a little bit actually. I was like.
They have to do that though, don't they? They've got to
Yeah.
be controversial. They've got to try and that's their job. Otherwise, it's fucking no one's gonna watch it.
Because one thing I really wanted to get across to them, because they were going down the whole nightclub route, but this is not just about nightclubs. It's pubs,
Yeah.
live music spaces, but pubs, we're losing 2 pubs every
Massive.
day at the moment.
Really?
My granddad, rest his soul, he was a member of CAMRA, the pub association,
Right.
since he was like, I don't know, 18 years old, since he could join it. And that's what he always, but this is like 10 years ago, he always used to say there's X amount of pubs closing every year in this, and
The rate of pub closures has doubled in the last year.
yeah,
What did you say it was? 2 a day?
2 every day.
crazy, mate.
What?
So this is how I describe it. You've got let's say an 80-year-old man who's just lost his wife, let's say, and he's sat at home, and the only place he's got to go is the pub, and that's where he gets that human
connection.
connection.
Do you know what? That is exactly what my granddad did. When my nan passed, that's where he went. He went to the same pub, the Barley Mow, every single lunchtime. Even when he couldn't drive, he got a taxi there. That's where he went every lunch, 12 o'clock on the dot. He had a couple of pints of real ale, had his lunch there, interacted, and then he went home, and that was it. He probably wouldn't see anyone, unless some family were going to come round or something. But that would be it on a day-to-day life, and that is such a great point that you just raised there. And that's what we forget. It's not just about young people. No. It's not just about going out partying and having a good time. Like, the pub represents so much for the older generation, because that's what they were brought up with.
People's mental health will just fall off a cliff.
Because then where'd you go? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't. There's going to be nowhere for people who don't have a lot of people, because that's what we forget. There are a lot of people out there who don't have anyone. So we need these spots. We need these places so they can go and interact.
Community spaces. That's it.
So they can have that eye-to-eye connection. Yeah,
they don't even need to talk to anyone. They can read the paper.
Exactly.
They often don't. You go into a pub and they just sat there with a pint around other people.
Yeah,
in a room with other people.
Yeah,
that's so fucking important.
It's amazing what
energy
you can get from that.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing lockdown taught us, was that we need these places. What did we miss during lockdown? What were we not able to do?
Yeah,
see people.
Yeah,
and look at the amount of people who died.
Yeah,
and not for reason, not because of COVID.
We'll talk about that anyway.
Dangerous.
About mental health, and you obviously got a massive responsibility now. You probably feel a bit of weight on your shoulders with this project, or is it more? Do you just find it so enjoyable that there's not much pressure? What I'm trying to get at, I don't know what I'm doing here. Trying to do a little fly. Did you feel like light?
Yeah, no,
no, because having some, you're leading the way for this. I assume you probably feel a lot of responsibility, and how are you looking after your mental health and your physical health and stuff like that?
Thanks for asking, man. I think. I know that this is probably going to become more and more of an issue as the years go on. So maybe I will get more and more responsibility as years go on. I'm not qualified at all to be doing this. Like I didn't get to university, didn't get any GCSEs. It wasn't even in the music industry. I'm someone who's got a huge passion for what we've been speaking about. Human connection, as we all do, and I'm just going to keep beating the drum, and hopefully, collaborate with people who can help take the voice higher. And funny bone.
We need to stop moving our arms.
Yeah, I know. What's
I'm
I
quite,
feel like
I'm quite camp.
We're doing this, and you're
I know.
you're
I'm
like
sat
this.
there like, yeah, I know. We're getting plenty of movement in here.
Yeah, mate. Like I don't know. I don't have a problem with drugs or anything. I probably had more of a problem with drugs when I was an estate agent back in the day. I don't really know why, but it could have easily gone that way. But I do struggle to. I think at the beginning of this year, I had a bit of a. Last year was pretty mad, and towards the end of last year, we just had lots of events going on, which were all quite stressful. And I think I hit a bit of a wall over Christmas, realised I've got no structure in my life. Sean was like the devil always on my shoulder, who messaged me ages ago saying, "Hey man, do you want to have a chat? Maybe we could do some fitness together." And I was like, no.
Resistance.
But now I have his number.
Oh god. But no, I think it's just I am obsessed with what I'm doing, and it probably to the detriment of other things in my life. And I wouldn't say I'm nearly as good a friend as I probably used to be to some of my nearest and dearest. I'm quite I'm not very present a lot of the time. I think I'm just I'm fine. Like I'm good, full of beans.
Yeah.
But I definitely could do more to look after myself, and bit more self love, I think, and a bit more structure. And I've riddled with ADHD, and I think I need to just kind of be a bit more kind of structured in how I cope with that.
The compassion with yourself is so important. It's something I learned the last year. I'm not ashamed to say I've spoke to someone going through my own troubles in the mental health area, but compassion is the one thing that's really pulled me through it all at all difficult points. You find that you're like, we talked about labels and stuff, and putting labels on yourself and creating these stories around things that you can't do or that you struggle with, and it's all about just finding that balance, but being really compassionate to yourself in those moments. Because I'll tell you now in this podcast, George, you're doing something amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you need to remember that, and remind yourself if you are going through difficult times. Remind yourself. Be nice to yourself. Tell yourself that you're doing well. Because you are.
Thank you, boys. That's very sweet of you.
Yeah.
Well,
it's so nice to get that. It's always a bit of a weird one. You're like, nah, just be nice. Just be nice to me. But no, that's really sweet. Thank you, mate. And watching what you boys are really tackling what you're doing kind of head on, and you're really just taking away the stigma completely away from the conversation. And I love watching your videos.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
You're smashing it, and we need more people like you. So big up yourselves.
Thanks, mate. Well, this all came organically. Like you said, what was funny? I wanted to interject, but you were on a really good roll, so I didn't stop you. But you said, when I said about what's the origin story?
Yeah.
You said, I wouldn't have this story where I was like, I come down by the light. That story was way better than the fucking light story. You jumped out of bed and you were like, fucking, what do I love? Like, that's a fucking mint story. What a fucking story. Like, it's fucking like you've wrote it, but no, man, like it sounded like it came organically, just as this podcast came organically. Like we're just sat here talking about real shit and trying not to, put labels on stuff or try to get away that, remove the stigma from certain topics. And I think
and create awareness as well. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's about creating awareness, especially with the project that you've got going on. No one's talking about it. It's the same with what we're talking on this podcast a lot. No one's really talking about it because, it's, I don't want to say this or I don't want to say that. But the problem is, if no one talks about it, it's going to get to a point where people aren't going to be able to experience the same things that that we've had the opportunity to. That's brought us to the situation that we're in now. So
I bet you boys must get a lot of people reaching out to you.
Yeah, we talked about we were talking about this earlier. Actually, it's like so many people just reaching out saying they can resonate with our story and how it's helped them sort of connect the dots with what's going on in their own life. And And I think that's important, you know, at the end of the day. And you know, the reason why I really wanted to get you on here as well, George, is because without these small venues, without this opportunity, like I would have never been able to experience this whole journey. And even though I had, you know, my ups and downs with drugs or whatever that is, still there was some fucking incredible times. Do you know what I mean? I got to travel the world. I got to play all these super cool small venues and meet. It's giving me goosebumps, like, you know, and have that opportunity. And I'm from a small town in the north of England where like realistically, like I wouldn't have had that without music, without, you know, that grassroots culture that I was, you know, that I was able to be a part of. So and the thought of, you know, like the younger generations not being able to experience this because of fucking greed from above, realistically, that's what it's coming down to, is, you know, is a shame. And what you're doing is amazing, mate. Yeah, so let's finish off with the classic question, shall we?
You ask, go on.
It's called the afters. So we want to know if you got any after party stories for us. What's your funniest after party, craziest after party? That
You've definitely got a couple, I can tell. You cheeky little grin.
That you can say.
I think the one which has just popped up into my mind actually is, wait, I've got a scar to go with the story.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah, there we go.
Strap yourselves in. No, it was me and a friend. We had a big night. It was a boiling hot day the next day. It was June last year, and we're like, let's go for a little swim up Hampstead Heath. Just got got a towel and went up to Hampstead Heath, and met a couple of guys who were there, and like, you know, gave me a bit of spliff. I was like, oh yeah, like, bait now. And I was like, right, I'm gonna go dive into this pond. And my friend was there with the camera, and I looked at the camera and I said, form is temporary, class, that's permanent. And I dove into the pond, not realising it was half a foot deep.
No
Took
way.
a big chunk out my arm. And then I fainted, and then went to hospital, got it wrapped up. I think they put some butterfly stitches on it or something, gave it a bit of a clean, and then about 2 days later, it got really infected. It was the week before Glastonbury. Next thing I was in hospital for 3 days on a drip.
No way.
And then they put me to sleep and gave it a good old proper clean out because it nearly got sepsis.
I hate stuff like that.
I know. And then woke up. And she said, "You're not going to Glastonbury." I was meant to be going to Glastonbury that afternoon. I was like, "Okay." Went home, packed my stuff in one arm, went off to Glastonbury, and by the end of Glastonbury, it was completely cured. Just something about that energy. You know what I mean?
Just been around all the
I just went to the stone circle. And
I like that.
Brilliant. Well, mate, thank you so much, man.
What are yours?
We
do them several times.
Yeah.
On a solo podcast.
Do you know, it's actually funny because I don't think I've said mine, and I actually have, every time that question's asked, I think, what the fuck is my after party story? And all I can think about.
Not an easy question.
It's not at all, mate. No, that's
half of them
all you can think about is what?
Go on.
Cut.
You forgot.
Oh no! All I can think about with my after parties is just sat in the studio doing loads of fucking gear on my own, crying. So they're not as funny.
Because I was ketted all the time. I was too fucking mong to remember most of them anyway.
There we go.
The issue. So yeah, there you go.
Anyway,
that's why we
that's your big questions to one you guys can't even answer.
That's why we ask it. Anyway,
George, thank you so much for coming down, man.
Thank you.
Really
mate.
appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Nice
Big
one.
love, man. Thank you,
Cheers,
boys.
guys.